For decades now, the message has been loud and clear: don't drink and drive. But judging by the rates at which people are charged in this province, some people still don't get it, particularly in the regions just outside the provincial capital. Why not? And what would it take to reduce the number of people driving under the influence in suburban Ontario? Let's find out with Julian Fantino, former federal cabinet minister, former chief of 4 Ontario Police Services, now chair of Aleafia Medical Cannabis Care. Andy Pattenden, York Regional Police Constable and Media Relations Officer with that service. Michelle Johal, criminal lawyer specializing in impaired driving cases. And Rob Simpson, principal at Sagewood Resources, that's a consultancy dealing with lawsuits involving bars and casinos. And we are delighted to have all 4 of you here tonight, here at our table at TVO, for a timely and important discussion. We're going to start by putting some stats up. I suspect you all know these, but we'll share these with our audience. These are the impaired driving rates in the Greater Toronto Area in terms of charges laid by the various police services. And we're going to compare, as you can see, the left-hand column is 2017, the right-hand column is 2018, the year we've just come out of. The Toronto Police Service, you can see charges are down just a little bit year over year. If we go to Halton, just west of here, it's about the same. But if we go to Peel, look how high those numbers are. And last year, even higher than the year before. And then in the York Region Service, where Constable Pattenden is from, level of charges are about the same, but again, significantly higher than Toronto or Halton. Let's do one more set of numbers here as well. Impaired driving rates in the Greater Toronto Area. This is charges per 100,000 residents. That's how they measure it, and these are all last year's numbers. We start with the Toronto Police Service at 41, but then look at the suburban police services. Halton at 139, Peel at 133, York at 149. All right, let's get into this. Julian Fantino, we'll start with you. You see these numbers? What do you think?
Well, you know, for a good long time, we've all recognized, or most of us have recognized, that impaired through alcohol driving or drug-impaired driving is the leading cause of criminal death in this country. So, as you know, we create a great deal of emphasis on murder rates and so forth, which is the right thing to do, obviously. But I think for whatever reason, we don't seem to have the same kind of determination to deal with what is, in fact, a very preventable crime.
Michelle Johal, what do these numbers say to you?
The statistics, sadly, for me, are unsurprising. This is a phenomenon that I was already aware of, especially in York Region. And I think judges in York Region have observed that since the tragic Mutso case, the statistics in York Region are going up rather than down.
Which is shocking.
And it's clear that the at-risk demographic is not getting the message.
The at-risk demographic being young men.
Yes.
Who drink too much and then get behind a wheel of a fancy car.
That's right.
Yeah. The Mutso case, just, you know, for those who, I don't know how anybody could forget it, but in case you didn't hear about it in the first place, this is a guy named Marco Mutso who was, I guess, grandson of a well-known York Region developer who drove drunk, killed three children and a grandparent, and sentenced to 10 years in jail. What do the numbers say to you, Constable?
Disappointing. And that comes right from our chief, Eric Jolliffe, who's very publicly stated that these numbers continue to be disappointing for us week after week when we publicize the names and the number of people that we're charging, 20 to 30 per week. It's disturbing. And to talk about Mr. Fantino's comments, the severity of the crime is significant. And we've had 9 murders in York Region in 2018, 7 people killed by impaired driving in 2018.
So it's almost as bad as murder.
And where do we publicly rate those and rank those? The difference is, you know, and the lives of innocent people on our roads being lost. So that's what it is in our region. That's what we see, and that's what's disappointing and disturbing for us.
Robert, what do the numbers say to you?
I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian on this. These are typical statistics of what's available today. They don't give you adequate data to assess the nature and extent of the impaired driving problem, and they don't give you enough data to develop effective solutions.
Go to the first part first. What's missing?
Well, for example, we know that the biggest predictor of impaired driving statistics is police activity. The number of officers assigned, the times they're assigned, at the places. And so they only reflect that dimension. If you want to increase arrests, put more officers on. If you want to decrease, take more off. We need better data if we're going to fully understand the nature of the problem and if we're going to respond in more effective ways.
So let me just understand this. Are you saying that the suburban drunk driving numbers might be higher because these police services have decided to deploy more officers to this cause?
That's a very real possibility. We just don't know. If we knew the number of police hours that were put into detecting impaired driving in those jurisdictions that you cited, then we'd have something to compare. But what if one of them put twice as many officers into that activity than another? You would expect to see a much higher arrest rate.
Well, can I get you to speak to that? Because in fact, if you look at the charges per 100,000 residents, your region, York Region, is almost 4 times higher than Toronto. Your population sure isn't 4 times higher, so does he have a point?
I tend to agree with that point, actually, that enforcement can be change the numbers and alter them in some way. In York Region, we put emphasis on enforcing impaired driving. That's what our communities told us they want to see from us, and that's what we do as a response to that. But what's troubling to us is that who we catch and the number of people that we're catching. So let's see, in 1 year, 1,650 charges laid is just a small portion of the people that are actually being caught.
Because you're not catching everybody.
That does not reflect the number of people that are actually driving while impaired. So to his point, it's even more shocking, more disturbing, the actual problem that exists versus what we see in the numbers.
Michelle, you want to have a comment on what you've just heard?
I certainly think that's accurate. I think that my observation, I practice primarily in Peel Region, is that in Peel Region, law enforcement is very aggressive in trying to apprehend drivers who have been drinking. It's known that in Peel, they will regularly hang out outside of LCBOs at 10 o'clock. Why 10 o'clock in the morning? Because that's a time that unfortunately some alcoholics are attending to refill after a night of drinking. And law enforcement knows that, and they know that that's the best time to try and nab that demographic. Obviously, they hang out outside of local watering holes, and I see that much more in Peel than I see in Toronto. And so I think that's certainly there is increased law enforcement in some areas versus others.
But if they're laying significant numbers of charges outside of LCBOs or local watering holes, then presumably they're catching a lot of people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing.
No, I agree with that 100%. But what I'm saying is I don't think that they're doing it to the extent in other jurisdictions. In Toronto, for instance, I don't think that they're being as aggressive. That's my own observation.
Okay. Can I get you, having run 4 different police services, can I get your take on whether or not you feel, I don't know if it's over patrolling, I don't know if we want to call it that, but whether the commitment that a particular service makes to rooting out this problem inflates the numbers?
Well, it's never over patrolling because at the very fundamental reason for police activity is the prevention piece. And every person you take off the road, or police officers take off the road who is in fact impaired, is possibly and probably preventing a tragedy. So we have to look at it that way. And during my time in policing, I always felt that of all of the things that police do, and they do it very well in most cases, preventing these kinds of situations is a fundamental job of a police officer. So it's something that police can actually have an effect on and a very positive impact. So going back to the earlier comments, depending on how much you dedicate or what resources you dedicate to this particular issue, you get the results that you are in fact working towards. I can give you an example when the stunt law came into being, which is a somewhat different issue, but nonetheless, erratic, careless driving or aggressive driving also kills a lot of people, and it's all preventable. When that came in and we targeted the high-enders, if you will, the high flyers, the reduction in fatalities and serious collisions across Ontario during my time with the OPP went down significantly. So police activity definitely has a very important role to play in the prevention and in doing so also the education piece.
Steve, can I pick
Please.
up on that last watering hole comment, because I think that's significant. I think 28 police services across the provinces have enacted a program called Last Drink. So wherever they pick up an impaired driver, the question they ask is, where'd you have your last drink? And if it's a bar, a licensed premise, then they have the option then of visiting that bar and saying, we just picked up a person with this blood alcohol level who says he had his last drink at your place. There's your first strike. You're on notice.
You, the bar owner, are on notice.
Yeah, because the bar at that point has broken the law in serving the person to intoxication. And so to try and prevent them from continuing to do that, the Last Drink program identifies them specifically. And recently I was speaking to a high executive at the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, that's the regulator, and he suggested that if you could get rid of 5% of the worst licensed premises in Ontario, you would reduce the problems dramatically. We've got 18,000 licensed premises in Ontario. So the problem, much of the problem, one aspect of it, is 5% of those 18,000.
And how many inspectors would there be?
There are only 48 inspectors for the entire province. We need to treble, quadruple that number.
Do you think, Michelle, that it's appropriate to put that level of responsibility on the bar owner or the bartender to ensure that they're not serving to excess some of their patrons?
Absolutely. In fact, this was a discussion that we were having in the green room earlier. If you were to attend at a local establishment or a restaurant, or even the Keg, for instance, the first question they ask you is, if you say you want a glass of wine, they say, do you want a 6-ounce or a keg-size glass? And we were having discussions about how a keg-size glass is a 9-ounce glass of wine, which really is the equivalent of 2 drinks. And so I think that they are responsible for obviously ensuring that their patrons are not intoxicated. And yet I think that they're sending mixed messages when they try and encourage you to order the largest drink, which is often the cheapest.
Steve, I think one of the real problems that we have here, and so much of the conversation is about what's taken place after the fact, the number of charges, bars, owners of bars, where people are driving. It's got to be shifted to earlier on. It's that decision that people make to have a drink, use drugs, and then get behind the wheel of a vehicle. How do we shift the conversation and change society to where people just will not get behind the wheel of a vehicle if they've had anything to drink or any drugs?
Well, let me pick up on that because, if you are drinking to excess, let's say in downtown Toronto, you can leave the bar and you've probably got a streetcar, you got a subway, you may have a bus available to you, you may have a taxi, Uber. I mean, you have a lot of options in order not to get behind the wheel of a car yourself and drive yourself home and put others at risk. If you're in Thornhill, an area of the province you used to represent, that's not the case, right? Not necessarily the case. You don't have as many options. Is that part of the problem here?
Well, it goes back to the decision-making at the front end. I mean, it's a little bit too late when you're stuck and you resort to driving when you shouldn't be driving. I recall a Crown attorney in my time who was absolutely passionate about this particular issue and prosecuted vigorously. And he would have a police officer or two in court even to follow an individual who just pled guilty out to their car and see them driving off again. So it's just that irresponsible behavior. But there's one other thing that's forgotten in all of these discussions, and that is the cost not only of human life and tragedy, cost to the health system, the lack of productivity, the impact on insurance, which we all end up paying for anyway. So there's a lot of reasons why this thing has to be dealt with in a much more assertive way. And that means, certainly speaking as a police leader at one point in time, I always thought that was one of the best use of police resources that we can actually quantify, because the absence of impaired driving cases is what you want to measure, not how many you get.
Well, I wonder, Andy, let me bring you in on this. I wonder whether or not, and again, if we go back to that second chart where York Region has the highest level proportionately of charges in the Greater Toronto Area, do you think that is a response to the appalling tragedy that was the Mutso case?
We've always, there's been so many highly publicized tragedies in York Region
But
as a
that was
result
the
of
worst
impaired
by
driving.
far.
It was one of the worst, absolutely. And what we thought, honestly, after that tragedy had occurred, that the numbers of people that were drinking and driving would actually go down. They saw those children's faces. We've so highly publicized them. Jennifer Neville-Legge pouring her heart out at every court appearance, but the numbers didn't go down. So we look at it from an enforcement perspective. We do so much education. We talk about this every single day. We put the pictures out there of these children, with Jennifer's permission, of course, and her support, but the numbers don't go down. So what is it going to take? Which has kind of led us to, our recent move that we made to start naming impaired drivers, people that have been charged with the offense.
Well, since you brought that up, let's go there. I was going to get to that later, but I mean, that does raise a whole bunch of issues. On the one hand, you want to name and shame people that you've charged because you think that they ought to be. How come?
Well, we talked about this earlier, that naming and shaming is not our name for the program. That's been a name that's been widely adopted. But our goal here is, and we have the authority to name people that have committed a criminal offense. We do this for homicides, we do this for frauds, break and enters. So the level of crime that impaired driving is increasing in severity. And as I mentioned before, we've had almost as many people killed in impaired driving in 2018 as were killed in murders in York Region. So it's a very serious crime. So
but I think every Monday, right? Every Monday you
Monday?
put on the York Regional Police website,
yeah.
name, age, municipality of residence of everybody you've charged with drunk driving.
And I can tell you it's 20 to 30 people per week that we've been putting on this
20 to
list since
30
December the 3rd. It's shocking. It's shocking. And my task is reading through each of these reports and trying to pull out one that's, an incredible incident where, people risked other people's lives, or they drove through a house, or they did, incredible things. It's no shortage of those incidents.
All right, but now let me play contrarian here. I'll bring the lawyer in on this one. These are people who have been charged. They have not been convicted of anything at the point at which York Region is, you're going to forgive me, I'll use the vernacular, named and shamed. Do you have a problem with that?
Personally, obviously, as a criminal lawyer, I don't think it's going to be an effective deterrent. I had an opportunity to look at the names of the individuals who were charged most recently with respect to the RIDE program from December 24th to January the 1st. Again, it confirmed my suspicions. 100% of the people that were named were male, and a lot of them were in that at-risk demographic that I had spoke about earlier.
20s and 30s.
Right. So I don't think that naming them is going to be an effective deterrent. And obviously, I do have some concerns. I mean, these are people who are before the court, who are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And naming them, I mean, it could have adverse consequences for them with their employment or obviously with their peers. And they haven't even had their first court appearance. So I do have some concerns about it, and I don't think it will be an effective deterrent.
Where are you on?
Well, let's go back to the choice, though. Those people made a choice to drive while impaired, right? So, will it be a deterrent? I've heard from people, in fact, I've heard from some people that have been arrested, that officers have told me, they said, give me the charge, just don't put my name on the list. It's shifting their thinking a little bit. I wish it would have shifted it earlier to the point that they would have thought, hey, I'm not going to have that drink and drive because I could be on the list. So
I want to know what former Chief Fantino thinks about this idea.
I think it's quite a proper activity on the part of the police because, as was mentioned, other crimes are publicized, people involved in other crimes, and it becomes part of the routine public awareness that and entitlement that the public have to know what's going on. This is no different. The only thing is, it seems that we've diminished the severity of the crime, that they should actually get special treatment. They're no different. Someone being killed by a drunk driver or a drug-impaired driver is no different than another innocent person being killed with a gun or whatever. So let's get it straight. This is the highest number of criminal deaths in this country attributed to drug-impaired or alcohol-impaired drivers. And that doesn't even take into account the horror of all the injuries and the consequences that follow. We've got trauma units at two wonderful hospitals here that work overtime to save lives. And were it not so, the consequences of impaired driving cases, crashes and that, would be much more severe. So let's quantify the crime for what it is. It kills people, innocent people.
I want to, Rob, bring you in on this issue here. And we'll harken back to what you described earlier about, do you want a regular drink or do you want a keg-sized drink? Back in my day, we used to call it blowing over 80, right? If you take a breathalyzer and you've got more than 0.08, what is it, blood alcohol content, then you are legally drunk. We used to call it blowing over 80 in the breathalyzer. Now they've changed the rules so that if you blow over 50, 0.05, you're in trouble as well. They can suspend you for that as well. Do you think people understand how much you need to drink in order to hit those limits?
I think you've just nailed a big part of the problem on the head. The whole issue is about changing behavior, driving behavior after you've been drinking. And there's very clear research on how you effectively do that. And with respect to impaired driving, we violate the very first principles. We don't have a clear message, and we don't equip people to comply with it. There are three messages we give out. The public education says, don't drink and drive. But the law, the criminal code, says, drive as long as your BAC isn't over 0.08.
Blood alcohol content.
Your blood alcohol
Concentration, yeah.
And the province says, no, drive, but make sure it's not over 0.05. So we've got 3 messages out there, and we get upset when the person ignores the first one. Now, the second one should be something that we could comply with, the 0.05. How do we comply? I would wager that I'm the only one in this panel that knows how many drinks I can have in an hour or 2 or 3 hours to stay under
What's the
0.05.
answer?
For me?
Yeah.
Each of my drinks puts my blood alcohol concentration up 0.021. So I can have 3.
You can have 2.5 drinks and then you're over.
That's correct. Now, in order to comply, the fundamental principle of effective education is give people the tools they need to comply. So I'd like to see a 10-year initiative where every new driver is given a personalized card saying, based on your sex and your height, here are the maximum number of drinks that you can have in an hour, 2 hours, and 3. And I'd like to see that customized to each person. And when they're doing their road test, I'd like to see the examiner then bring that out at the end and go through it with them, and then have them sign something that says, I understand the maximum that I can have, and I undertake to comply with it. At that point, you're setting people up with all of the specific information they need. And over a 10-year period, we'd have everyone between the age of 16 and 28 so equipped. Now, that won't prevent things, but at least then it makes explicit as what they should do to comply with the law.
Andy, can I get you on this? Do you think people, I don't know, what are you, 6'2", 190, something like that, 6'2"?
5'10", 175.
Oh, you present bigger. Okay, you're 5'10", 175, which means that somebody who's bigger than you, let's say someone's 6'2", 200, if you can do 2.5 drinks and stay under, the bigger guy probably thinks, oh, then I can have 3 or 4.
And that's not the way it works.
And that's not the way it works.
The trouble is we give people a moving target. We say, yeah, you can have some, and here's a number. That number means nothing to anybody until it's too late, until they're given a device, they blow into the device and it says fail. And then they realize, oops, I had too many. Or maybe they knew they had too many going into it, but how about we take the guesswork out of it and make it 0? It's not okay for you to go to your job in the factory, have a couple drinks, go operate that machinery. So why is it any different that you're allowed to get behind the wheel of a vehicle after having a couple drinks and put innocent lives at risk? If we took the guesswork out of it, 0 BAC, 0 THC when driving, we take the guesswork out of it. And I think we'd start to see the numbers come down.
What does the lawyer think of that?
I think it's an excellent suggestion. The reality is I don't know that it would work. I mean, a lot of people are of the view that they should be able to go to an establishment and have a glass of wine if they want, or have a beer. I personally think that...
And then drive home.
And then drive home. I think the focus should be on planning ahead. And for young people, there's so many more options that are available. I mean, when I was younger, it was just a taxi. Now there's Uber and there's Uber Pool. There's ride-sharing apps where it's much more affordable to take an alternative to public transit. And so getting the message out, perhaps on social media campaigns, that plan ahead. If you're going to be drinking, don't drive. Use a ride-sharing app or use a designated driver service. Many people are not familiar with designated driving services, but there's services where 2 drivers will come to you and your car. One person will get into the driver's seat and take you and your car home safely. The other driver follows in tow, and then you and your car arrive home safely.
What does that cost?
You pay them. I think it starts as little as $15. Maybe on average it's about, 50 to 80, but it certainly costs a lot less than the alternative. But I mean, not a lot of people are familiar with these services. And an idea that I had is perhaps, reward these sorts of entrepreneurs or businesses, provide a subsidy or an incentive for people to use them. Because the reality is the vast majority of people that walk into my office, I talk to them about these services. They're not aware of them. Nobody's aware of a designated driver service.
I'm really curious about your position on this, because I would have thought that as a former police chief, you probably wouldn't mind the notion of forcing people to have 0 alcohol content in their bloodstream if they're going to get behind the wheel. On the other hand, you're a former conservative politician, which means you probably don't want the government telling you, too much about what you can do with your freedom. So where are you on this?
I'm absolutely squarely on the prevention piece, and I would go even further because driving is a high-skilled kind of an activity at the best of times. We all know that. And then when you introduce drugs or alcohol or distracted driving, for that matter, into the equation, the risk level goes up significantly. So I would advocate for absolutely zero tolerance on any of this, and you pay as you play. People know now the education's out there. There's not much more educating you can do if people don't want to listen and don't want to act responsibly. So then that's when you start teaching lessons. You teach one, you deal with one, you teach 100.
So you would be in favor of a new law which says if you're going to get behind the wheel of a car, zero alcohol content, zero, I don't know, what is it, cannabis content? Whatever you call it, THC content.
It could be any other drug too. I mean, it not necessarily need to be cannabis stuff, but the other thing too is one of the things that I thought was very effective when we did the stunt driving legislation and the enforcement was the seizure of cars. That is an inconvenience that people just absolutely hated. And that's a lesson taught.
Did it change behavior?
Well, I think it did because across the province, the year following, all things being equal, the weather was the same, the traffic flows were the same, and on it went. But the reduction in traffic deaths and fatalities across OPP patrolled highways went down two digits.
A word to our director, Sheldon Osmond, here for a second. I'm on board 2, page 3, Sheldon. Can we bring up the world's worst offenders as it relates to alcohol-related traffic deaths per 100,000? United States of America, perhaps no great surprise, are number 1. These numbers admittedly are a bit old. They're 10 years out, but I suspect they haven't changed much. There's us at number 2. Ireland, number 3. New Zealand is 4th on the list. Australia is 5th. Anybody got any theories as to why we're so high up this list of the worst offenders of alcohol-related traffic deaths? Robert, do you want to take a stab at that one?
I'd love to. And you left off Holland, which is 20 times greater than the death rate in Holland. And
where they do make a lot of beer.
And they are allowed to drink and drive. But their legal limit, which would be the equivalent of our criminal code limit, is 0.05. And there's been a lot of talk over the years that Canada should get down to that level as well. And a little bit of a contrarian again, there's not much research that says that under 0.05 that your driving is significantly impaired or impaired to the point that there's a real risk to you or to the public. Once you hit that threshold, it seems to be the determining factor. So let's emulate what's been done in some of these other jurisdictions. By the way, in much of the U.S., it's even higher. It's 0.1. So it's the highest of all, and it has the highest death rate. Now, there's never a single factor that's going to solve everything. So what we're talking about is adjustments that will nudge things in the right direction. And I think that's perhaps the most significant nudge that we could undertake if we wanted to.
I don't know how long RIDE's been in effect, but it's probably 30 years, maybe even more than 30 years.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I'll date myself. It's at least that, Steve.
Yeah.
I had an officer come to me that was saying back in 1986 was the first time they remember York Regional Police doing a ride check.
Okay, so more than 30 years. Reduce impaired driving everywhere. RIDE, that's when those programs came in. How is it possible, 3 decades and more after bringing in RIDE, we're still the second worst country in the world at this kind of thing?
Drinking and then getting behind the wheel of a vehicle is still socially acceptable. Less so than in the past, I would say, but it's still socially acceptable to do it. We also give people...
Not drunk. Drunk driving is not socially acceptable anymore. You think it is?
We've been in bars, we see people who've had drinks. We don't know how much they've had, we've seen them drinking. We allow them to get behind the wheel of a vehicle. That's socially acceptable.
We meaning?
People. I mean, if you've been at a bar, if you've been at a club, people are allowing this to happen. They're serving people alcohol. They know, look at a major sporting event. There's alcohol being served like crazy. You know, most of those people...
Not in the fourth quarter of a football game, not after a certain number of innings of a baseball game, right?
It's scaled back, but how many have people had to that point? I mean, I've been at Blue Jays games recently where you look around and I can't believe the amount of alcohol that's being consumed, and parking lots everywhere that are full of cars that all leave at the same time. So, but that's okay, it seems. So there's still a social acceptability piece. I think that's got to change. And by, I think, changing the laws and shifting them to a point where it's zero tolerance. If you look at smoking in this province, we talked earlier, people used to smoke in airplanes. People used to smoke in bars, clubs, again.
Elevators.
Elevators. Yeah. Now it's, if someone lit up, it would be the most horrible thing ever.
But we have not had that cultural change as it relates to alcohol, in your view.
100%.
But there's another.
Steve, if I may as
Please.
well, on the RIDE program, it rolls out, as we know, during the holiday season. I was a proponent of having it year-round. That in itself is a huge deterrent, just a mere fact. So there's a number of elements here. You have to deal with the prevention, the education, all of that. The likelihood of getting caught has to be elevated, and then consequences. So the RIDE program should be out there year-round. It shouldn't be just a holiday kind of activity on the part of any police department. And every police officer, from my point of view, should do RIDE programs. Just do it. It's the one thing that, as I mentioned earlier, we can absolutely, with certainty, say that is a prevention. It prevents deaths, injuries, crashes, and catastrophes.
What's stopping police services from implementing it year-round?
Resources.
Meaning
it
what?
always comes down to resources, and also the priorities that a department puts on traffic safety, for instance. Not everybody's at the same level of commitment to this very issue. But if you dial it back and look at, again, what I said earlier, which is in fact a very concerning fact, is where is most of your injuries and deaths, criminal deaths, coming from? Preventable. It's from impaired drivers. The other thing too, I mentioned earlier, the health costs on the system, all of this stuff. So if we were to look at this as a package deal, the police have probably the most strategic tool, if I can put it that way, to enable us to deal with this issue in a consistent year-round basis.
Michelle, if driver education for 3 decades has not managed to convince, and I can say this, like the dumbest people in the world, who are 20-year-old men who think they can drink to excess and then get behind a wheel of a car and be fine, if that hasn't worked for decades, what's going to work?
I think we have to try something new. I mean, increased penalties, I personally believe, are not going to be effective. I mean, prior to 2008, Mr. Fantino will know this, conditional sentences or house arrest was available for people who were convicted of impaired causing bodily harm or impaired cause death. And in 2008, the Harper government came in and it scrapped conditional sentences for impaired bodily harm and impaired cause death, and that has not had any impact on the rates of drinking and driving. So I think that increased penalties are not the answer. I think we have to look at the nature of the substance itself. Alcohol is a mind-altering substance, and we have to recognize that this at-risk demographic don't really comply with low-risk drinking guidelines. So we have to get the message out to them that I certainly agree that, you know, if we could have the RIDE program year-round, that would be an effective deterrent, but we need to get the message out that you cannot combine drinking and driving. To nominate one of your buddies as a designated driver, in my experience, just has not worked. With my clients, often what happens is they'll choose the person who's the least drunk to drive everyone home. You know, I've had 12 beers, you've had 6. Okay, so you've had 6, you're driving home. That approach obviously isn't working. So I think that they need to be really encouraged, if they're good with technology, to use ride-sharing apps or an alternative to driving. If they're going to be drinking, they should not be getting into their vehicles at all. So I think before there was a lot of promotion of like nominating a designated driver. I don't think that that's worked.
Steve, can I make a couple of points on that? On your intro to that last question. It's illegal in Ontario to drive with anything other than a 0 BAC for everyone under 22. Have you seen any ads that have broadcast that to the general public? I think it's perhaps the least known piece of information in Ontario. And I think that's a failing again in terms of our public education messages. Secondly, and you know, in some of the lawsuits I'm involved in, I'll get videos inside a bar. And you'll see people at the bar who are staggering, who are ordering shots or shooters, and they're getting served. And every time that happens, the law is broken. And these are the same people who get into their cars later on. So unless we're going to do something to stop it at the source, much of it at the source, then we're never going to solve the problem. And what we have now is, I'll call it the elephant in the bar, because there are 18,000 licensed premises in Ontario. And the fact is that many of them, their business model, maximizing revenue, entails maximizing sales. That means getting as many of your patrons drunk as possible.
Well,
and
but
I
if
see
you-
it all the time.
If you had some sense that if you sent somebody out that door of your establishment drunk and they got into a car and you would be legally responsible for whatever happened after that, maybe you'd think twice about trying to pour infinite numbers of beers down their throats.
You'd like to think so, but in
Doesn't
the
work?
cases I see, they're so blatant. Those rules, those principles are so blatantly disregarded, it's disheartening. And go back to the question, we have 48 enforcement officers at the AGCO to take care of that. And many communities don't have the last drink program. So these are all things, small things that we can do to tighten how things operate today.
Constable, you got any ideas for how to get these rates down?
My personal belief is I think we have to change the laws to zero. I think we have to shift the mindset to if you're going to get behind the wheel of a vehicle, you can't have any alcohol or drugs in your system. Go drink, go have a good time. Just don't get behind the wheel of a vehicle. I think we'll start to see some change. In York Region, we do run ride programs year-round. We do have officers in unmarked vehicles out there looking. The one encouraging number that we do see, and I think it's probably from all the publicity we've had in York Region, is the number of people that are calling 911 who spot a suspected impaired driver is actually going up. And a lot of the drivers that we're catching are as a result of those calls to 911, which is encouraging. The problem is it's too late. Those people are out on our roads and they're putting innocent lives at risk. We don't want to have any more deaths in our region as a result of impaired driving.
And I do presume, I mean, I said it earlier, but I presume the stats back this up. 20-somethings, 20 and early 30s, they are the worst offenders, males?
Yeah, male 22 to 35, I think, is the range that we catch most of our offenders in, but that's not to say that's all of them. I mean,
Sure.
there's females in there, there's people older, people, not too many younger. It seems the younger ones actually seem to be getting the message, and maybe it's because it's that zero BAC for novice drivers, which we do also publicize in our region. So, and for commercial people operating commercial motor vehicles, it's zero BAC as well. I think it's shifting, and maybe it just needs to shift to all drivers, zero BAC, zero drugs in your body.
Michelle, since the Marco Muzzo case in York Region, where this guy has now gone to jail, got a 10-year sentence for, was it 4 people he killed? 4 people? And 4 people he killed, 3 kids. Have you seen a difference in the way that the legal system approaches drunk driving crimes, sentences, and so on?
Absolutely. In fact, in 2016, it used to be that if you were a first offender and you were convicted of a drinking and driving related offense and you did not injure or kill anyone, it used to be that you would get the minimum sentence. What we've seen post-Muzzo is since the stats are not going down, we've seen judges in York Region who are completely exasperated, and rightfully so. We've seen them handing down jail sentences. So jail sentences for first offenders in cases where there was no injury or death caused. So that is a novel approach.
Jail meaning how much time?
Well, in some cases 30 days, 45 days, but an actual jail sentence. Keep in mind that the mandatory minimum is a $1,000 fine and a driving prohibition, of course, a permanent criminal record. But it was very abnormal to see jail being a sentence that was given to a first offender if nobody was hurt.
I want to get the former chief in on this one. The federal government has changed the impaired driving laws, most notably by allowing police to perform sobriety tests without probable cause. What do you think of that move?
Well, you know, there have to be safeguards and checks and balances and all of that, because the last thing you want is to have a very important added tool in your kit, if you will, as a police officer, and then abuse it. So again, it's just another step in the effort that people are making to address this issue. So I'm in favor of it, but we hope that police exercise that authority and that power, if you will, with great care, because if you abuse it, you lose it, right? Mm-hmm. So we're all, I think, in tune with that. But going back to the issue of penalties, jail isn't the only thing that can be done. There are some jurisdictions in some countries where they actually seize their car. The car is forfeited to the Crown or to the government. Or
do we
whoever.
do much of that?
Well, we impound it for a period of time, and then it's released, and away we go. Usually released to a responsible person who's not impaired or whatever. But I'm talking about as part of the lesson to be learned here and taught. Just take their cars. Period.
For how long?
Forever.
Forever.
Forfeit them to the Crown. That's it. You pay as you play. I would put it on hold until a conviction is rendered, and then the car goes.
Michelle, can you see that as an option?
I've never actually heard that suggestion before. I mean, it does make sense. I mean, at the moment, if you're charged with a drinking and driving related offense, your car is immediately impounded and you cannot get anyone to pick it up on your behalf for 7 days. Then you have to attend at the impound lot and pay a significant amount of money to get your car back. So certainly that is a huge inconvenience to people that make the decision to drink and drive. And this suggestion just takes it even further. I mean, the young people that we were talking about, quite often they'll borrow their parents' car. Can you imagine what sort of trouble they'd be in if at the conclusion of a trial their parents' car was forfeited to the Crown?
Forever.
Forever. I mean,
That'd be intense.
that may be an effective deterrent.
I think that, you know, if we're going to take a serious look at the outcome and how preventable all of this is and how people are not learning, they're not being disciplined about drinking and driving or drug impaired driving, then I think you have to elevate it to the next step. I don't think jail per se is the strategic consequence. The strategic consequence is take their car.
A little over a minute to go here. Rob, how about, we're in a new regime now with cannabis being legally available. Would you like to see different kinds of penalties if you're caught driving high? Because, of course, those who are pro-cannabis say it's not the same as drinking, as driving drunk with alcohol.
Yeah, I think we're proceeding blind on this one. We have no idea what level of cannabis in the blood will impair your ability to drive. The limits that have been set, I've looked for the research to back that up. There isn't any. And cannabis stays embedded in your body fat for 6 weeks. So it's an impossible situation to try and deal with. There are technologies being developed, I understand, but I've yet to see any evidence that it's effective. So we don't know what the appropriate level should be, and we don't know how to detect it, and we sure don't know how to prevent people from smoking and getting into their cars.
And do you think it's less serious to drive high as opposed to drunk?
Both are serious. Anything that impairs your ability to operate that motor vehicle, which is a complex item to be operating, is not good. It puts other people, innocent people, at risk. So anything that impairs your ability to do that puts people at risk. Again, we've set out guidelines for people. You can have X number of nanograms of THC in your system. What does that mean? What does it mean? We give people a moving target. We know it's a slippery slope. You've had more alcohol, your ability to make a good decision becomes less and less.
So be safe, go for zero.
Go for zero.
Go for zero. Got it. Julian Fantino from Alethea Medical Cannabis Care, the former chief, the former cabinet minister, Michelle Johal, the criminal lawyer, Robert Simpson, Sagewood Resources, Andy Pattenden, York Regional Police. Good of all of you to join us here around our table at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank you very much.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.